Hi there, just to say there are 2 movie reviews in this episode, so if for some reason you want to skip the Barbie review and just go straight to Oppenheimer, have a look in the show notes and there will be a time code there which will take you straight to it. Hi, it's Dave here. This is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is The Cinema. It's the podcast where we walk home from the movies, and today we're seeing 2 movies back to back. It's Barbenheimer, baby.
For anyone who doesn't know what that is, Barbie and Oppenheimer are being released on the same day. It's turned into like a viral film thing where everyone's so excited because they're such different movies but both huge budgets. And
everyone has admitted that they're going to both. So it's like...
So the kind of thing is, are you going to see them both in one day? Which one are you going to see at first? There's been so much discourse. There's obviously never been a bandwagon Dave and I haven't jumped on. So we've decided to go and see both. For logistical reasons, we're going to see Barbie first, Oppenheimer second, just based on what cinemas we're going to. But we will think about it afterwards and decide if that was the best way to do it. And before we get into, we're going to talk about Barbie in a minute because that's the one we're seeing first. But just kind of in a general sense, and the whole buzz around it, it gives me so much joy because it's all centered around like, what cinema are you going to? Where are you going? All the cinemas are like getting behind it. And it's just like, I feel like studios have gotten so lazy and just kind of, people don't really go to the cinema anymore. What can we do about it? They're all on streaming. Like, I almost feel like films have kind of given up a bit. And I think in particular, in this instance, Oppenheimer's actually benefited from the fact that Barbie has gotten such a push because Warner Brothers has put everything behind the marketing of Barbie.
But it's been incredibly clever. The Barbie marketing campaign deserves to win awards.
What it's done is realizing how people consume now, and Dave and I both work in marketing, so we're really interested in it. People consume with very much themselves and their experiences as the center. So Barbie has created like TikTok filters, like when you go and see it in the cinema, there'll be like big Barbie boxes that you can take photos of yourself in. For months there's been all this viral stuff of I'm this Barbie, I'm that Barbie, and it's just really captured the fact that people want to create their own content and also be part of something and be part of something bigger, and it's totally tapped into all that stuff. It's also got all their huge stars out everywhere until the actor strike kind of stopped them. But I think luckily for Warner Brothers, they'd gotten most of the big junkets out of the way anyway. They've been everywhere talking about it. Then it's really benefited Oppenheimer, which naturally had a more conservative marketing strategy because like they didn't need it. It's a Christopher Nolan film, like with, people are going to go and see it. It was about World War II. But then I've seen loads of clips of like Cillian Murphy talking about how he can't wait to see Barbie. They've all tapped in on it.
And Tom Cruise is part of it.
Yeah.
It just feels like there was great buzz around the cinema, not just these movies. They turned these movies into events, and that's what's so interesting when you compare it to a summer where we saw Indiana Jones come back to the cinema. Someone who you would have previously defined as absolute senior citizen of the summer blockbuster, and that disappointed. We saw superhero movies falling flat, and now it's like a biopic about the man who created the atom bomb and a toy product placement movie essentially becoming the biggest event of the summer.
And
the other thing unexpected and fantastic.
It's also the thing about people want to be at the centre of the discourse, because now obviously Oppenheimer wasn't making TikTok filters or anything like that, but because it's become which are you going to see first, when are you going to see it, everyone's engaging in the conversation. Like even on our Instagram I was like putting up polls, which you seeing first. The amount of people responding, like everyone feels like they can kind of contribute to the conversation, and that's a wonderful thing. And I hope all the studios and everyone else like takes away from this that like people will go and see films in the cinema if you market them and if you engage the audience. And like with Indiana Jones, like you can't just wheel out Harrison Ford and get him to go to a few red carpets anymore. Like that actually just doesn't work, and you can't do it, and you need to be clever, and like you need to just put your money where your mouth is and do it properly, right?
But underneath it all, you need a good movie as well.
They're both getting really positive reviews, so we're really pumped to see them both.
I will say, I think studios will take the wrong lesson from this, as always. But let's talk about Barbie now, because this is really interesting. Because on the subject of studios and companies taking the wrong lesson, this movie's going to be an enormous hit. That's clear now, and I'm very excited to see it. But what's weird is Mattel. This I think it was the New York Times, or Google it anyway. Look, Google Mattel's cinematic universe or whatever they're building. Mattel, who own Barbie, have like basically outlined their plans for something like 40 plus of their properties turning into movies. And some of it is just bizarre and weird, like Uno, like a movie about Uno, the card game.
It's like, it didn't work. We all watched Clue. And that was actually, at least had a murder mystery to it. Like it doesn't work.
I just feel like, I just feel like the wrong lesson is going to be taken from this thing. However, right off the bat, they clearly are taking gambles with their properties, allowing interesting filmmakers to do interesting things with their properties. So, I mean, they're at least starting off on the right foot.
Once they don't make a universe and like Barbie isn't in the Uno world or whatever, do you know what I mean? I want my films to be separate. I'm sick of multiverses and everything layering into everything else. But just on Barbie, I'm so excited to watch Barbie. Very big fan of Greta Gerwig as a filmmaker, as a writer. I think she's absolutely wonderful. I love that her and Margot Robbie worked so much together on this. They've made it very clear that they never wanted Barbie to just be like, okay, Margot Robbie kind of looks like what you think about when you think of a Barbie, but that Barbie was not about a certain body type or certain skin colour or anything like that. Like, they've just done a very conscious effort around casting to make sure that you see lots of different bodies on screen. I can't wait to see Ryan Gosling. I think he looks amazing as Ken, and I'm just really excited. Like, you know, there's been so much buzz about it. It looks great. Like,
I'm more excited for this than Oppenheimer.
I'm more excited for this than Oppenheimer as well, but I'm actually really excited for the whole thing. Like, I can't separate them in my mind anymore.
Yeah,
I can't.
Such a weird thing that I did not think would happen.
I think of like my dad as an example of someone who won't have heard a second about Barbie and Oppenheimer being anything to do with the two of them, and he'll just be like, oh, I want to see Oppenheimer. Like, there'll be people who only want to see one of them as well, and we can't forget that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And as I said at the top of this episode, if you do want to skip Barbie, go straight to Oppenheimer. You've got the time codes there in the show notes.
Now we're going into Barbie in a few minutes, and then we're going to be in our car. We're going to drive to the next cinema, so we'll record our Barbie review in the car.
Yeah. So see you soon.
Bye.
Hey, Barbie. Can I come to your house tonight?
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
So cool.
You can find me under the lights, diamonds under my eyes.
This is the best day ever.
It is the best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever. Do you guys ever think about dying?
When my heart breaks,
Some things have been happening that might be related.
when my world shakes.
Cold shower, falling off my roof, and my heels are on the ground.
Okay, we're back. We have just seen Barbie, and we are in the car driving straight to Oppenheimer.
Yes, our multi-cinema Barbenheimer experience continues.
I'm so excited. I can't.
What a time to be alive!
Dave, thoughts on Barbie before we get to spoiler street? Just your thoughts on how do you feel about the
Kathy,
movie?
you're hosting now, right? So you have to tell everyone that if it's their first time at the cinema aisle,
Uh-huh.
we don't spoil the movie until we drive onto spoiler street.
Yeah.
And then if you're here for the Oppenheimer bit, then there's the time code, which you should have heard at the beginning, or it's in the notes where you can skip ahead for that.
Uh-huh.
So, Barbie, okay. So, I was, as you know, as I said at the top, very excited for this movie. More excited than Oppenheimer. Okay, so my expectations were actually super high for this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I think. I think it was very, very entertaining. I found it very funny. I laughed a lot. I really admire the production design of this movie. The way they just brought this plastic world to life. It feels very, it's very meta. This is, the movies that are the big hits these days we're in the world of meta now. You've got Across the Spider-Verse commenting on Spider-Man's place in pop culture and pop history. This movie feels like a blend of Toy Story and the Lego Movie. I think they feel like progenitors to this. It is a movie that comments on Barbie's legacy, on Barbie's place in modern society, and it tackles a lot of interesting ideas in a fun and novel way. I think Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach did a fantastic job pulling all this, pulling this madness, and it is mad, into some semblance of a movie plot that is funny and entertaining. And I think she deserves so much credit as a director because she did an incredible job.
Are you gearing up for a butt?
I've got a butt. I think I'll talk about it more in Spoiler Street, but I think there's a lot of missed opportunities here. This movie hints at having a real emotional heart to it. It introduces a number of characters who I assumed would be the heart of the movie, and I think it drops the ball there. I think its ultimate message is a little bit muddled and all over the place, but it doesn't, for me, detract from what is an incredibly unique and entertaining and funny experience, and I would watch that again in a heartbeat.
I would watch it again in a heartbeat, and I'm actually going to watch it again in 2 days, my mum and sisters.
My God, well, we didn't talk about what an event this movie. I mean, we talked about it at the top about like all of the film world is talking about Barbenheimer weekend, but this is converting to bums on seats. Like, our cinema has never been that packed, has it?
No, it was unbelievable, and it was probably 80% minimum women in the room as well, women and girls. But I think just on the set design piece, it's so incredible when the screen lit up with this world, and obviously we've seen all the promotions and all the trailers, but actually none of that did justice to like living in the Barbie world. Did you see that it actually featured in our Architects Digest?
No.
Yeah, like the magazine actually, the set featured in that.
Oh, wow. They did. Sorry, the production designers and the set designers of this blew, like they absolutely blew it out of the water. They deserve an Oscar.
It was stunning.
Yeah.
So it looked incredible. The music was unreal. I saw that Mark Ronson did the music.
I didn't know it would have musical numbers, and they were brilliant.
They were so good. Margot Robbie is just like beyond perfect as Barbie casting. I can't conceive that anyone else could have ever done the role. Ryan Gosling as Ken is possibly one of my favourite film performances of all time.
So funny.
He was so wonderful, and it reminded me that he was like a Disney Club kid, wasn't he, back in the day?
Yeah, him and Britney Spears, right? And
like he's a singer and dancer.
And,
Which, and I know he did. God, what's that Hollywood 50s movie? La La Land. I know he's in that, and he's obviously brilliant in La La Land, but this is like a completely different singing and dancing vibe for him. He's incredible. He's such a performer. And then it's like, what a cast, like the amount of actors in this film. I didn't know Will Ferrell was in it, and he's absolutely fantastic in it. America Ferrera, I love her. We love Issa Rae on this podcast, so to have her in it. Then we have who's the guy from the
Simu Liu from Shang-Chi. He was brilliant.
He was so good. Then we've got the new Doctor Who, whose name I can't remember. We had, was it Michael Cera?
Michael Cera's in there, yeah.
Unreal cast, absolutely unreal cast. So all of that was like just wonderful. I loved the buzz of it, the energy of it. I enjoyed the plot. Actually, really surprised me. I've seen a bit of a trailer for it, but I didn't really know where the plot was going to go on it, and I think that might be deliberate. I really enjoyed the plot. I agree with you on like, I think they took. What I think I really like about the film is it took routes I wasn't expecting and spent time in moments that I wouldn't necessarily have spent time in, and that I could feel our audience, which was a lot of teenage girls, losing interest. Like, you could feel the moments when the chatter was coming in, or in Dave's case, the girl next to him was taking selfies of herself.
Some teenagers are very badly behaved at the cinema. Not to sound like the oldest I've ever sounded in my life, but those two next to me would not shut up.
But I think this actually speaks to the point that it's probably bringing in teenagers who never go to the cinema and aren't in the habit of going to cinema because it wasn't really like that well behaved. But I also remember when I was a teenager, like, me and my friends chatted through movies anyway, and if we'd had camera phones we probably would have been filming ourselves. But there was definite moments in the film that felt very adult and existential and that weren't landing with the teenagers. But I actually don't mind that, because I like that Greta Gerwig is very ambitious and was just going deep, and I love that she did that actually. So I, even though it went places I probably wasn't expecting, I actually really enjoyed all of it. And I know you said you didn't feel like it was emotional or you didn't feel it landed. It did land for me. I love the overarching message of the film, which is basically Barbie's fix feminism, and then kind of learning what feminism is and just having such a feminist lens. I loved that personally, and I think I'm so happy. I just had so much joy to be in this film, watching all this on screen. And like, I had a lot of the Barbies that were being referenced, or my friends had a lot of the Barbies, and in particular my friends would have had a lot of the like really cool like camper vans and stuff, and I would have just so coveted as a kid. So I recognized more than I would have thought of in terms of them. And there's some very funny references to like cancelled dolls. Like, I definitely remember the pregnant one, and she had this creepy little baby inside her tummy, and like that was very funny to see on screen. So yeah, I got such a kick out of it. It was very special actually. I can't wait to go back with my mom and sisters and just to see such big budget like female movie on screen. It's very unusual, isn't it?
Yeah. And look, I think let's get to spoiler street now, because I really want to talk about the plot, which I think is probably the most interesting bit for me. So spoilers now, big warning now, if you haven't seen Barbie, spoilers for Barbie. So first thing I want to spoil is, and I don't know if people know that this is the plot, and I definitely didn't know that this is the plot, and I loved it, is that we knew from the trailers, from all the promo materials, that like Barbie and Ken go to the real world, which is so much fun when they enter the real world, and they're so vivid and colourful and the world is so bleak. What I didn't know was going to be the plot is that Ken, the brilliant Ryan Gosling, who'd been very disrespected and ignored in Barbie land, or Barbie world, whatever it's called, discovers the patriarchy and then brings it back. That is so funny. Genius. Yeah, and I didn't know that either, and it was brilliant. The fact that Ken is like nominally the villain of this movie is so clever. And I think, you know, to pick up your point about what you said a minute ago about the premise of this movie is so funny and relevant and clever and self-aware that, like you said, in Barbie land they think that they have fixed feminism and that everything's great, and I love that, and that in Ken is the sidekick in the world of Barbie, always has been. And it's so cool because, you know, there'll be so many young girls at the cinema there today who have never heard of the patriarchy and that actually won't know what it's. They'll know they'll understand what it means about it's a man's world and all that stuff, but they won't have actually like heard of terms like that. It's like introducing feminist language into what is a very mainstream film. I found that brilliant. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. They mined not only like a clever bit of conflict out of it, but it was really funny as well. Like watching him go into a school library and pick up like a book about trucks and horses. Like the movie pokes fun at traditional perceptions of masculinity a lot as well, and I found all that absolutely wonderful. And the movie also acknowledges that the way it was at the beginning when Barbies ruled everything and Kens didn't have a vote, like that was fucked up as well. Like Barbies are like, we fixed feminism, but all the Barbies did was live in a world that they ruled. Like no one was getting a good deal now, but they, like, obviously in the real world women do have a vote and have a say, so like it was worse for Ken's in Barbie world than it is worse in our world, which I really enjoyed as well. And that's what by the end of the movie they're like, they basically say, I think America Ferrera or somebody says, you know, oh, Kens are now going to exist like as women exist now, as like almost second class citizens, but they at least have made progress. Do you know what I mean? I love when he's like somehow absorbing the patriarchy history and he sees like all the visuals of Sylvester Stallone in his like big mink coat. There was a lot of Sylvester Stallone stuff in there. I think there must have been a Ken that actually had a mink coat or something, because so much of it was referencing the real dolls. No, I don't know. I thought that was straight from that Sylvester Stallone picture. Like it's like if an alien, if you tried to explain to an alien like, oh, here's our world and here's the patriarchy, now you do it. Like that's what it felt like. The little details of it were so funny. There's so many funny jokes in here about the relation, you know, like men come inside and I'm going to play my guitar at you.
Oh my god, it was so fun. And my favourite bit of the whole film was like, I'm just Ken, anywhere else I'd be a 10.
That musical number
so good.
was incredible. Did you say Mark Ronson did the music?
I saw that he did the music. I don't know who wrote the song, but
Oh
I
my
saw that
God.
he was like...
That's like the best musical number of the year.
When all the because all the Kens are absolutely unbelievable. When all the Kens, first of all, I just love that the women realise that the way to bring the men down is like, oh, just make them fight each other because men will do that.
Yeah.
So they start having a battle scene.
Their war was so funny as well.
It was like Battle of the Bastards, and then they kind of meet and just move into a dance number because they're much more comfortable with that, and the dance number was absolutely gorgeous. And that's one of the things I want to say about Greta Gerwig as a director is she can direct fight scenes, she can direct dance scenes, like she is something else. Like
I've seen some of her movies, and it is just, she's always been very firmly in the sort of familiar indie camp. This is just like, yeah, as you say, it's bold and bright and colourful and has a lot of physicality, musical scenes. Like, this is a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
And she smashed it.
And the fact that her and Noah Baumbach wrote this film, the fact that she directed it, the fact that Mattel, the funniest thing about the other villain in this movie is Mattel, who are the people who own Barbie and who actually would have, like, are behind this film. The fact that Mattel are also the villains and that Mattel are the bad guys is absolutely wonderful self-awareness. Will Ferrell's the CEO of Mattel, and I just absolutely love the scene when they show us the boardroom of Mattel and it's just all men in black suits and they're like talking about glitter and female empowerment. Like, that is actually, I think a lot of companies wouldn't let that happen.
Can I tell you, I have a problem with this though, okay? Now, all that stuff was very funny. Will Ferrell and his board members and like roller skating into the world. Like, there's a lot of very funny stuff there. Although, firstly as well, I mentioned the Lego movie. This feels very like the Lego movie, and Will Ferrell was also the head of the corporation in the Lego movie, who was both in the real world and the fantasy world. Yeah.
Oh, I've never watched much of it.
An odd coincidence. But
maybe intentional.
Yes, maybe. But I found that a bit tricky because the movie posits this is Barbie land, this is the real world, okay? And I'm like, okay, so she's coming into the real world. I'm like, okay, now we're in the real world and we're out of Barbie land. So I like fantasy and reality, you know, there's a clear separation. But then suddenly we're in the boardroom of Mattel, and that's kind of its own sub-fantasy land, do you know what I mean? Where they are aware of all that their properties exist in an alternate
Yeah, but it's
dimension.
not the real world. Like, it's a fictionalized version of Mattel.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's not the real world. And that threw me because I'm like, oh, so we're just in, it's not the real world. This is a hyper fantasy version of the real world. Do you know what I mean?
That's okay though.
Well, I guess it is okay, but it required an extra level of mental gymnastics I had not prepared for. So yes, good and surprising. However, and this leads into one of my problems with the movie. It pulls the reality of the setting, it makes it less real. And for me, I thought where this movie was going, and it's fine that it didn't go the way I thought, but I thought it was going to stay in the real world, and that it's going to be about America Ferrera and her daughter, and that they are going to be the emotional crux of this movie. Because when Margot Robbie is having those like sort of flashbacks of those memories and being played with, I was getting super Toy Story vibes, and it was making me well up. I think
the montage was like straight out of Toy Story of the toy. It was like probably deliberate, not
exactly.
Toy Story.
But I was like, wow, this is going to be powerful and it's going to get me. And then they sideline those two characters. They get absolutely sidelined. And I think it's to the movie's detriment. Now, it was surprising that they obviously chose to make it more about Margot Robbie and her character's emotional arc. But she is not real. And the whole thing about her becoming real, I think at the end, I think is weird and not well handled. Her creator coming out is just a bit, it's a bit all over the place. There's
creator
too many ideas.
The creator scene is where the entire audience fell off a cliff, and our set, everyone was started talking, and like you could just feel that everyone was like, what's happening?
But it lost me as well. I'm like, what are you trying to say here, movie? Like that I just felt like it was all a little muddled, And I felt like the movie would have been more interesting if they had focused more on America Ferrera's sort of insecurities as a woman, which is what they seemed like it was kind of doing. But then she just becomes this kind of accomplice to a weird heist. So I'm not saying that anything that we got is bad. It's, as I said, it's brilliant. It's very entertaining. I just felt like it wasn't what I was expecting, and I think it would have been more powerful to root it more in the emotional experience of those two women.
I mean, yeah.
The real women. Do you know what I mean?
Well, fine.
The daughter character completely had nothing to do.
I think America Ferrera actually wasn't sidelined and had a ton to do, and she was actually crucial in the unraveling of the patriarchy. It's actually the daughter that was sidelined, but they deliberately sidelined the daughter, which I thought was interesting, because Barbie's like, I'm here to help this girl, and then Barbie's like, wait, it was the mom I was having memory of.
That was a good twist as well.
That was the twist. So I think the daughter was actually at that point consciously and deliberately sidelined, and it became about the mother, and the mother had kind of forgotten herself, and it was about that. I didn't mind any of that, and I like when movies take me where I'm not expecting, though I think a lot of the audience would agree with you in that they didn't like it. But I actually really liked at the end that Margot Robbie's character was like, I can't live in Barbie land anymore, like she's too conscious, so she decides to move to the real world. And right at the end we think, oh, she's got a job, she's going to start a job. And then I think they answer the question that it certainly I'd been thinking about, because she'd made a point of acknowledging earlier on in the movie that she'd no genitalia. I just love that it ended on her going to a gynecologist's office.
I mean, that's funny. It was a good gag. Yeah.
But it was actually, I had been thinking it because she'd gone on earlier about how they don't have any genitalia. So I just think that I like that the movie totally surprised me and landed in a totally different place than what I thought. Again, I agree with you. I thought it was going to be all about America Ferrera, but it's the Barbie movie. Like, you're saying she's not real, but Barbie's the central character and the protagonist of this film. She is real in the film, and she becomes human in the end. She is the main character. America Ferrera is not. Yeah,
okay, but they did a pretty good job of trying to tie up a third act resolution. They even comment on it, like, wait, what is Barbie's ending? And people make suggestions. And,
yeah. And I think the point is, though, like at the start of the film, like Will Ferrell and those men are like, we need to put Barbie back in her box. And the point is, she's got her own consciousness now. She needs to make her own decisions. And I actually think part of the film slightly derailing and confusing us at the end is the kind of the point, which is that she's chosen her own journey. It's not where you thought the film was going to end up, and it's just different, and she's not getting back in the box. And I think that's the message of it.
Yes, I guess, but I think the film has to work a lot harder to make, and I think Margot Robbie did a good job, but the film has to work a lot harder to make you care, emotionally be invested in Barbie and Ken as two-dimensional characters who are very entertaining and fun, rather than focusing on the human characters, which I think would have been preferable.
But I'll be interested to see what our listeners think about the ending, because I do think it is divisive, and I definitely felt it in the room. But I think ultimately the whole film as a whole surprised me, because it's not just the kind of flashy, bright Barbie. And in some ways I think losing people wasn't good, but in another way I kind of like that it's almost like stealth slipped in some surprising scenes. And I think the reference to and I really enjoyed the reference in the film to men explaining The Godfather to women was so funny. And I love,
there's some really funny stuff.
Yeah, like, come on, the amount of men who've tried to talk to me about The Godfather, and I've repeatedly been like, well, I just don't really like it, like, and they can't accept it. And I just love that she brought that up. Now, the Zack Snyder joke felt like an absolute lead balloon in our audience. Not a single person laughed, and I don't think got the reference.
I didn't laugh either.
Yeah.
I got the reference. It wasn't funny. Anyway, look, we need to move on. So we're drawing a line under Barbie now. We're looking for a parking spot here for the next leg of our experience. So welcome if you have just skipped ahead from the time code and you don't want to watch Barbie and you're here for Oppenheimer. So the Barbie chat is finished. We're on to Christopher Nolan and Oppenheimer. Kathy, how are you feeling about this? Where are you at on the Oppenheimer thing?
I mean, I'm buzzed for it because I love huge budget movies. I love Cillian Murphy. Even though I don't always love or even particularly like Christopher Nolan films, I always enjoy the scale of his films. And actually, when we went to see Tenet a couple of years ago, the first film we watched after lockdown was one of my best ever movie experiences, just because we were so happy to be back in the cinema. So I'm really positively predisposed to this. I don't know anything about Oppenheimer. I actually had never heard of him before. So yeah, I'm kind of going in open-minded, and we're going to see it in the closest thing Cork has to an IMAX, which is a Max with lots of X's at the end.
Yeah, it doesn't have the I.
Yeah, so as good as we can get it in Cork. Now I am already highly stressed about the 3-hour runtime. It's actually making me anxious.
I'm stressed about finding parking. I think the whole of Cork has gone.
Parking in there. How are you feeling anyway?
What's interesting is that I'm not particularly excited about this movie, but I'm excited because everyone else is excited.
Exactly, it's made me so excited.
Is it like it's just such an event, isn't it?
Yeah, it's such an event. Like this never happens, right? When you book the cinema in Cork, you never have to worry about seats. I went to book it like 5 days ago, and I basically got us the last 2 seats. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
Did you hear of Oppenheimer before this film?
Yes.
Right.
I'm a lot more familiar with history than you are, it seems.
I mean, I know,
No, yeah.
I know there's an atomic bomb. I just didn't know who invented it. Like.
Yeah, okay. Do you want me to mansplain to you what it's all about, or do you just want to watch the movie?
No, I just want to watch the movie, but I have the fear of a 3-hour film, and I really hope they put an intermission.
Here's
in
what I will say. I might alienate some people with this, but I think Christopher Nolan is a really overhyped director. I think he's a very good director, and I love that he's one of the few living directors who is the draw. Mm-hmm. Like, people are turning up, not because they want to know the story of Oppenheimer. Yeah. Let's face it, they're showing up for Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
And that's awesome that a man can do that, and he has done a lot for cinema and is keeping it going, and is fighting. So much so he left his deal with Warner Brothers, his long-time deal, and went to Universal because of the whole HBO Max thing during the pandemic. He was not happy,
and he brought cinema back after the pandemic.
Yeah, so I really admire the man, and I think he is a great director, and I love Interstellar and Inception, and I just think he's got this weird cult around him. He's got this kind of like, I don't know, like there's a sort of it's like a nicer version of the Zack Snyder toxic fan base where there's just, he's revered as this, like, and for me, I don't ever see that in his movies.
But it gets my back up as well when there's that kind of overly reverent predisposition to anything. It immediately gets my back up. So the Dark Knight thing is a bit like the Zack Snyder thing. You're getting too into fandom with comic books, so he's pulled it back now, and this is kind of for everyone else, right?
Yeah.
And World War II is like the number one most bankable theme you can have in a film as well.
It's an interesting one, yeah. I mean, I know he's going to deliver good entertainment. Cillian Murphy's awesome. This has got a great cast. I'm interested in the subject matter. Yeah. So yeah, let's
excited. Let's hit the Max. Bye.
This is a national emergency.
Detonator charged.
We're in a race against the Nazis. And I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb.
We have a 12-month head start.
18.
How could you possibly know that?
We've got one hope. All America's industrial might and scientific innovation connected here. A secret laboratory. Keep everyone there until it's done.
Let's go recruit some scientists.
Build a town, build it fast. If we don't let scientists bring their families, we'll never get the best.
Why would we go to the middle of nowhere for who knows how long?
Why? Why? How about because this is the most important thing to ever happen in the history of the world?
You're the great improviser, but this you can't do in your head.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world?
Chances are near zero.
Near zero.
What do you want for theory alone?
0 would be nice.
Hello, we're back. We've seen Oppenheimer, but it was last night. We came out of that movie and we were just worn down from our double bill and 3 hours of Oppenheimer. It was just, we couldn't string a thought together, so we were like,
we'll pick it up in the morning, which we've done. It's early morning.
But we haven't talked about it.
No, early morning. We're out for a walk by the sea, talk about Oppenheimer. Wow.
Well, so firstly, if it's your first time listening to our podcast, we're not going to spoil Oppenheimer. Although I think if you know, you should know how it ends. I hope. But we will when we turn onto Spoiler Street by this lovely cliff walk. So, Kathy, what did you? I'm out of breath already.
Yeah, we're walking up a really steep cliff, by the way.
It's a long walk.
So I was incredibly blown away by this film, actually. Any listeners will know that I hate movies that are long. I tend to get really annoyed by long movies and feel like people should have cut loads of stuff out of them and that they drag and lag. I honestly feel like this 3 hours whizzed by. It's the most engaged I've ever felt in a movie of this duration. I was quite astounded by it. I feel like, and I mentioned I don't always like Christopher Nolan movies, albeit I always respect him as a director and a filmmaker. I think this is the best thing he's ever made. I think it's an astounding piece of work. I think it's probably one of the best films I've ever seen. I think Cillian Murphy is an astonishing screen presence. It was absolutely lovely for us watching it in Cork, because Cillian Murphy's from Cork, and that just makes you really proud, even though his achievements have nothing to do with us, but like, it's really nice. And it was a totally packed cinema, and people actually clapped at the end.
How amazing! Just to like,
yeah, it was amazing.
In one day we saw like 2 packed out screenings.
It was so nice.
We normally, for context, like, our cinemas are never booked out, ever.
We've often been the only people in them.
Yeah.
So it's just such a joy to be at a completely packed out
cinema is back.
Yeah. We mentioned that we were going to a Max screening, which is which they have in the Omniplex in Cork. It was fantastic. Like, the sound was incredible, the visuals were incredible. I'm so glad we went to that screening. But back to the film, yeah, Cillian Murphy is astonishingly good. Like, he's always good. I always rate him as one of the best actors. He is just phenomenal in this film. I mentioned at the beginning that I actually hadn't heard of Oppenheimer before. I knew the kind of cut and thrust of some of this stuff, but by no means had any details. So I came at it with really no knowledge and just found the story fascinating. I kind of don't want to speak too much before spoilers on any particular elements of it, because I do think what's very interesting about the film is like how he chose to tell the story and the storytelling devices, and we'll probably get into that more in Spoiler Street. But I think it's Cillian Murphy's film. Like, it's got a fantastic supporting cast, but it's all about him, really. And what this film doesn't at all do, and what I had a slight concern in advance of, is like my least favourite genre is like what you call a biopic or a biopic,
yeah,
whichever way you say it. I was
going to say this exactly.
It can be very hit and miss if that formula works, if you're talking about a real person who lived in history and like how you tell a story. Now, and I think this is
sorry.
A bee just flew at us.
It flew onto the mic, so you probably all heard that as well.
But this is more the story. This is a science story, and it's a story of like the building of the atomic bomb. And I think that's why it's such a fascinating film. And then, of course, it's also about Oppenheimer. But even though he's the namesake and the star of it, it's actually a very scientific film. And I love watching all that development of all the scientific elements. But the sound was incredible.
Oh my God,
yes. The
yes.
score was incredible. The visuals were incredible. I just adored it. I absolutely adored it. Right, Dave.
Yeah,
go.
I'm just stunned by it. Like, I think it's a masterpiece. This is like, we were saying at the beginning, it's like, while I do think there's a lot of hyperbole around Nolan sometimes, he is a proper cinema director. Like, whatever the definition of that might be, but like, he is telling stories with visuals and sounds, and in the most interesting way, and conveying ideas.
You could have heard a pin drop in the cinema.
Yeah, exactly. The tension that is wrung from a load of people in a tiny room interviewing, which is kind of one of the core foundations of this movie for 3 hours, is absolutely jaw-dropping. But to pick up your point, which I agree with, is that this is a biopic, and that is my least favourite genre of movies, because you tend to have a well worn out story portrayed on the big screen by an actor doing a big Oscar baity performance that is often just an over-the-top impersonation of a very eccentric figure, right? So in a weaker film, it would be Albert Einstein, like, who is a very eccentric character. Or I'm thinking of the Stephen Hawking one recently, or just people with like very like big sort of eccentric characters and big performances. But Robert Oppenheimer, as a person, as we are seeing him conveyed here, is kind of interesting, but very subtle and like somebody who doesn't quite express his emotions or feelings to the people around him.
Well, like, it makes sense. Like, there are rooms full of scientists. Like, but that's what it.
No,
would
but scientists.
be like.
No. But I disagree with you there, because the scientists around him are huge personalities. They're conflicting with each other. They're all arguing all the time. Robert Oppenheimer is someone who keeps his cards ridiculously close to his chest, and that is what is so impressive about this as a movie and as a performance by Cillian Murphy, because it's quiet and restrained, and it is.
I'm actually smiling just like thinking about how good Cillian Murphy is in this film.
Cillian Murphy does so, he not only carries this film, he is this film.
Yeah.
Like, this film, which I actually do think it has a great script, and I don't always rate Christopher Nolan
it's a fantastic
and his
script.
brother's writing either, but here is just like, he tells this story with a lot of complexity and detail in a very interesting way, in a way that he likes to play with time, and sometimes that can be gimmicky. Here it really adds something. But Cillian Murphy's performance is the heart of this movie. It's the core of this movie. It is expressing a genius's conflict between trying to progress science and humanity and seeing things that normal people can't see, trying to live in a political context, and how those two kind of marry together, and also having to deal with literally the world changing because of their decisions.
Yeah,
and
that stuff, the philosophical elements of it are dealt with so well as well. And the history, it's such a moment in time, because you've got characters like Albert Einstein, Oppenheimer, Heisenberg. You've got all these. Even I was like, I've heard of these dudes.
The names of the scientists that are getting thrown out are like they are household names.
It would have been like, what a time to be alive as a nuclear physicist or whatever the hell he was. What was he again?
But also, it's like World War II and Hitler is happening at the same time. Like, it's an incredible time in history. But what's funny is that, like, there's a line in this movie which is in the trailer by Matt Damon, who plays the general in charge of the Manhattan Project, or Los Alamos, and he says, this is the greatest thing that has ever happened in the history of humanity. And when you see that in the trailer, and kind of when you see it here, it's so over the top you almost laugh.
But it's true.
But it is true. It actually is. This changed, like, it opened a door by which we are now in a world living in the shadow of that decision. And nuclear threat and mutually assured self-destruction is a possibility that we live with in the background of our lives today. And that is a future that Oppenheimer was trying to reckon with in the moment of doing it, in the aftermath of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it's something that is relevant to us today. And so I was honestly... Christopher Nolan just spun the whole thing into... I think
it's the best film he's ever made.
It's just like I was gripped. I thought the way he weaves all the different... like, he's weaving, like, courtroom hearings, public hearings with smaller public hearings together, and they're bashing off against each other to create momentum and storytelling, and it's just propulsive. I mean, like... Yeah, I'm super impressed by it. It was amazing.
Every 5 seconds we were like, oh, there's that famous actor. Oh, because obviously thousands and thousands of scientists work on something like this. And I think the film did a really good job of conveying the amount of people that, you know, it's not just one man who can do something like this. And they really wanted to convey how it's like thousands of people from the scientific community and outside of that coming together. And nodding to that, I think the amount of characters who came and went, frankly, couldn't remember any of their names. But it's just like, oh yeah, oh, there's that famous actor. I can't even think of any of them off the top of my head now, because there was like 40 of them.
We'll list some off in Spoiler Street, because there were some surprises in there as well. But that's what I mean by this being like a better version of a biopic as well, because it kind of, a worse version of this would just, you know, just tell the story with the plot. And there is a bit of that where you've just have all these characters and coming in and like it just has to get through this stuff. But it's all grounded by Cillian Murphy, who is at the centre of this whole thing, or Oppenheimer. And yeah, I mean, will we get to Spoiler Street?
Go to spoilers. We both loved it anyway. Recommend. See it in the biggest screen you can watch it in with the best sound. If you're in Cork, go and see it in the Max.
The sound.
The score is just wonderful. I'm just so glad we saw it in that screen. And I think it's the kind of film, and everyone knows this, and this is why I do love Christopher Nolan. Everyone knows you need to see his movies at the cinema, and
he shoots on film. It
like,
looks
it would
like
be such a
gorgeous.
waste. It would be such a waste to watch this film on a small screen. It truly would be.
Yeah.
It would still be a fantastic film, but it would be such a shame, and particularly, you know, the scene when the bomb goes off.
Well, let's.
You want to see that on a big screen, right?
Let's talk about spoilers now.
Yeah.
So spoilers for the movie Oppenheimer, and I guess spoilers for real life. So those scenes that you're describing that just stood out to me, that you have to be, just have to be in a silent room with your own thoughts and sharing Oppenheimer's horror for those to be truly effective. You can't really, I don't think this is going to have the same impact on the home setting when you watch this and then pause it and then talk about it and go for a cup of tea.
Yeah.
So the ones that stood out to me were, yes, the bomb scene is incredibly impressive, but for me, the one that absolutely floored me, the scene that I'm still thinking about this morning, is the scene after the detonation, after the two bombs are dropped, where he gives that speech at Los Alamos.
Oh, that was
the victory
fantastic.
speech in this tiny sort of basketball court, with all these people in the bleachers. I was floored. You've got Cillian Murphy conveying.
Court? What?
There was a basketball net behind them. They'd set up.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, they'd set up. It was obviously they'd built Los Alamos with facilities and things, right? That's where they were. You've got him conveying. He's saying these words, which is obviously a speech he's written.
He's like,
all
the
about
Japanese sure didn't like it.
Yeah, all this kind of stuff, and it's his words are chilling. You can see he's battling with the reality of what he has contributed towards and what they have done, but they don't just express that with Cillian Murphy's brilliant performance. Christopher Nolan and his team do this, like what they do with sound here is particularly incredible. Suddenly the audience is quiet, then you're just hearing his words. Then suddenly sound comes ripping back in. You know, the sound, the way they layered in the sound of the stamping feet throughout the whole movie. You know, he's late. We see him later where that stamping feet is following him throughout the whole movie.
And he starts imagining someone's like skin coming off and someone's crying. And I think they're the moments where you're like, Christopher Nolan is an absolute god of cinema. And the other scene that I think actually took a similar vibe for me was the scene where he's being interviewed and his wife's behind him, and then he has to admit in this interview process that he spent the night with an ex-girlfriend, aka cheated on his wife.
Oh, and suddenly he's naked.
And suddenly he's naked because he's so vulnerable. She's sitting behind him. Then next minute he's basically having sex in the room, and it's like the visual of like what his wife would be imagining in that moment. And then it was just like so well done. And I think and then afterwards he's like to her, but you knew already that I'd done that. And she's like, yeah, but now it's on the record.
Yes.
And I really felt that, and I actually do want to speak, even though we're like, it's all Cillian Murphy's movie, I think actually Emily Blunt in this got a really good character compared to, again, most biopics where there's like a very sidelined spouse. like she's obviously living in his shadow as the film's about him, but she had actually a very complex and interesting character. She had genuine input on him, and like I love when he's like, we walked through fire together. Like you got a real sense of their kind of dynamic over the years and how she challenged him, and like I love that she got that moment at the end when she just refused to shake that guy's hand and Cillian Murphy shaked it because he can't help himself, because he's like always trying to appease everyone. And I love that moment for her when she was just like, I'm not shaking that guy's hand.
Her moment with the prosecutor was pretty great.
Oh God, she was wonderful.
Where
in that
she's
scene.
like immediately feels like under threat by him, and then she bounces back.
She's so good. And she had been a biologist, that's the thing. Like, he's with incredibly intelligent women as well. It's just that because she is a woman of the time and has married and had kids and now isn't like a scientist anymore.
Okay, I would like to talk about one thing I think was ambitious but didn't really work that well, and this is Christopher Nolan again playing with format and time. So he presents at the beginning, you know, there's half this movie's in black and white and half isn't, and there are two title cards that come up. One says 1 fusion, 2 fission, and this is a bit like what he did in Dunkirk, where he's trying to, you know, tell 3 different stories in, you know, 3 different ways. So, but I was unclear as to what he was trying to communicate, because in my head it seemed like black and white equals the 50s and colour equals the past. But that is not the case, as I learned 2/3 into the movie.
But I think by the end we both understood it, and I guess one of the things, and you mentioned Dunkirk about Christopher Nolan, that I like is that he doesn't spoon feed audiences and he leaves you work a lot of stuff out for yourself. But I was very confused when I realised that there's effectively 4 timelines, was it? But I got very confused by the other black and white one where Cillian Murphy was like debating at a table with Robert Downey Jr.
Yes, and because this is what got me.
I thought that was in the early 40s.
But that scene.
So
no, I knew that scene was in the 50s because they're talking about the Soviets and the hydrogen bomb.
But I didn't. I truly, I was like, when is this? And you were to explain it to me.
What confused me about that scene was that we saw it in black and white, then they cut back to it in colour, and I'm like, so wait. The black and white and colour has nothing to do with time. And then we both realised, we think, correct us if we're wrong, listeners, that the black and white was Robert Downey Jr.'s perspective and colour was Oppenheimer's perspective. Is that how you saw it, Kathy?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I couldn't quite capture what was happening. I found all the until I realised that Robert Downey Jr. had been, and they did a bit of a like twist, for want of a better word. The twist.
Sorry, that twist was a bit lame. It was kind of obvious that he gave the documents. Go on, anyway.
Well, whatever way they were trying to, suddenly it was about his witch hunt and not Oppenheimer's, whatever. Until that happened, I was like, why are we spending so much time with Robert Downey Jr.? Like, I couldn't actually figure it out. I was confused every time he was on screen. So, I think... Morning. I think I was glad when they explained to me why Robert Downey Jr. was getting so much screen presence. I really enjoyed the kind of perspective of the witch hunt on Oppenheimer and then him answering for it later. But yeah, I was a little bit confused by the whole thing.
So what I hadn't known about was all of Oppenheimer's links to the Communist Party, and I found
fascinating.
So that was all fascinating to have the McCarthy era analysis of his background and being discredited as the sort of core kind of conflict in this movie. And I thought all that was really interesting.
Such good storytelling as well, because we know the bomb's going to get built. So yeah, what is the core tension?
But can I say another way to the way he uses visuals to express the passage of time really well was that jar filling up with marbles. Yeah. You know, which we know that is them reaching, you know, the time when they've got enough plutonium to detonate it, and you're just like, so there's a lot of just simple ways to communicate the story visually that I was so impressed by.
I always love anything around communism in the McCarthy era. It makes for such riveting TV and film, right? Because it's so fascinating that there was an actual witch hunt in like a modern day against people who had any associations or suggested associations with the Communist Party. And I found it really fascinating. One of the things I loved about the film was because it spanned from the 20s to like
the 50s.
It caught such a period of his life, and the fact that, yeah, in the 20s, why wouldn't he have dabbled in communism? And then how that can affect you later on in life is really fascinating. And it did make me question him, and people were like, we don't know Oppenheimer, we don't know what he stands for. you know, it could have actually been an element of him being a Russian sympathizer or whatever else in some of the choices he made later on in life. There also could have just been that scientific element of, well, we need to share knowledge because if the Russians know we've built this, then we can all just stop building worse weapons. I also believe that. Like, I like that we never quite understood we never really understood his true motivations. And some of the points the cross-examiner was making, like, well, you suddenly minded afterwards when Russia were going to be the target, but you didn't mind when Germany were going to be the target because you're Jewish and you didn't want Germans targeting Jews, but then you've sympathies to Russians, and like his own where his own politics were lying were very interesting. I love the stuff from when he was in the 20s and he was studying in Europe, and the fact that he obviously was like genius who could pick up every language and whatever else, and he actually knew all the German scientists who were then going to be building the bomb for Hitler. Like, he knew everyone.
Heisenberg and
like, he was the most networked scientist ever because of his time spent in Europe, and at that time it was such a new field of study, so there was only like a few brilliant minds working in it, so all that stuff is just so interesting.
But that's one of the core themes of this movie, is science versus politics. And we hear Josh Hartnett's playing that Professor Lawrence, telling him time and time again, there's no room for politics in this university, right? Keep it off. He's trying to unionize the professors, but it's a hypocrisy because ultimately they get swallowed up by politics. They're working for the American government, right? That you cannot separate the two. And just to your point, before politics interferes, you have a worldwide network of scientists brought together by scientists, not by borders. Mm-hmm. And that is, those divisions are then inserted because of Germany and America and Russia and the national stage politics. And ultimately that's the kind of decision that Oppenheimer has to make in the end, is that science is, and he makes the conscious decision to hand over science to the government, right? And that's kind of what he's saying in the hearing. It's like, it wasn't my decision to make, I made a recommendation.
But it's also like, to Einstein's point though as well, is like, once you've done it, you can't undo it.
Yes.
Once you've added to the scientific knowledge.
It's for them now, it's not for you.
And it's also for them, and it's also for anyone can take your science and do whatever they want with it afterwards. And like, so he was very much the boss and the big man for a couple of years in managing the site and developing it all. And then I love how they showed us how basically impotent he was after that. Like, he couldn't even get his phone calls answered, and he didn't like that, so he wanted to go back to having a position of power and influence. So that's very interesting as well. Also, total side note, that Oppenheimer is like a complete horn dog. Absolutely loved that addition.
I wish we could get that on the poster.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that, and quite enjoyed it. I think there's kind of too much to talk about with it, and like we could talk about it for another 3 hours. But what a day! Like, it was I can't believe we haven't gone back to back in the cinema since before we kids. 2 such different movies that it was a brilliant thing.
Both
like, you could never
satisfying.
You could never go back to back on like 2 Marvel movies, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like, they're so different, and I think that is what was so good about watching them back to back.
But they paired really well together.
They paired really well.
But I think they're both great examples of what cinema can provide.
Exactly.
And I don't just mean movies. I mean, like, they looked great on the big screen. Both of them. They were just entertaining and thought-provoking. They're both they're so perfectly complemented, and I love that the world just kind of got behind this scheduling conflict.
And like, when we went to the bigger cinema, right, which is way more screens and stuff, to see Oppenheimer, the amount, because that's a huge shopping centre, we went in to get food, and like, there was whole tables of people in pink, male and female. It was so fun. Like, the whole cinema was talking to people wearing pink. There was definitely more people there to see Barbie than Oppenheimer, because interestingly, more of the Max screens had been handed over to Barbie than Oppenheimer. I think partially it's a programming thing because Oppenheimer's so long, so you can get more money if you put the Barbies in, but also because of the demand, I'm guessing. So yeah, it was quite a buzz. I'm absolutely buzzing after a day yesterday. I can't believe I'm glad we ended on Oppenheimer actually, and funnily I had thought of doing it the other way because Barbie would be like the palate cleanser, because I was thinking that Oppenheimer could be a bit dull.
That would have been my choice as well, but
because Oppenheimer, because I thought it might have been a bit dull or
Oppenheimer
intense.
was exciting.
But exactly, yeah.
It was so exciting.
So and because I sometimes have come out of a Christopher Nolan film like a bit cold, like a lot of the Dark Knight stuff. So I was thinking I'd need Barbie afterwards, but actually I think Oppenheimer was the better second.
Yeah, I think it worked really well.
Yeah.
Barbie was a really good appetizer.
Now I'm going to go and see Barbie again on Tuesday, so therefore Oppenheimer is actually the centre of a Barbie sandwich for me. I'd love to see Oppenheimer again in like 10 years. I'd love it to get a cinematic re-release.
Yeah.
Like I'd love to watch it again.
I can't ever imagine throwing this on at home.
No.
Like, I don't know. I feel like I've experienced it. But yeah, look, guys, let us know what you thought of Oppenheimer and Barbie. We are thecinemile@gmail.com if you want to email us, or at thecinemile on Twitter, Letterboxd, Instagram. And
come over to Patreon where we review TV shows and movies. This month we're doing conspiracy theory movies, which our patrons are picking, which I can't wait because I love a conspiracy theory. And
yes, and we've just finished Silo season 1 review.
Yeah.
And there's loads of good TV
about,
stuff.
And more and just like that episode's coming for me.
You get about 45 old movie reviews up there as well.
Yeah. So anyway, tell us what you thought of Oppenheimer and Barbie. Can't wait to hear from everyone. Bye.
Bye.
All my life been so polite, 'cause I'm just kidding. Anywhere else I'd be a 10. Is it my destiny to live and die a life of blonde fragility? I'm just kidding. Where I see love, she sees a friend. What will it take for her to see the man behind the tent and fight for me? I'm just kidding, and I'm enough, and I'm great at doing stuff. So hey, check me out, yeah, I'm just kidding, baby. I'm just kidding. I'll see you on the Malibu beach.
I'm Laura.
I'm Lauren.
And this is Go Love Yourself. She went, you're 26? I was like, size 26, yeah. She was like, oh, right, that makes sense.
This is the show where we're learning to love ourselves a little more and taking you along with us.
I grew up never seeing anybody that looked like me, and that made me feel like not part of society, like almost like not a woman, because I just never felt like I fit in.
If you've got a relative that is mean about your body, Laura, what do we say to them?